How dare you raise weapons against a child, you heartless vagabonds? A thunderous voice roared from the shadows, shaking the silence like a war drum. She must die, one of them snarled, eyes blazing. She stole a sausage! Another shouted, veins bulging with rage. Do you even know how much a sausage costs? There she was, lying in the dirt, bruised, bloody, barely breathing. A small, thin girl with tangled hair and clothes so torn, you could barely tell their color anymore. People were still shouting, some were laughing. A moment ago, they were all beating her. Yes, over a sausage. Not gold, not money, not a watch. Just a sausage. The child's name was Clara, and all she wanted was food. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside. So when she saw the sausage sitting on the edge of a vendor's tray, oily, steaming, unguarded, she took it. But someone saw her, and in this part of town, there is no mercy for the poor. The butcher shouted first, then others joined in. Thief! Beat her! Let her learn her lesson! It didn't matter that she was just a child. It didn't matter that she cried and begged and tried to explain. They beat her until she stopped moving. That's when he arrived. A black car stopped by the roadside. The back door opened and a man in an expensive black suit stepped out. He was tall, sharp-eyed, and his presence alone made people freeze. His name was Richard Williams. Yes, that Richard. CEO, billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the country. But today he wasn't acting like a billionaire. Today he was just a man, horrified at what he saw. Stop it, he shouted. She's just a child. He pushed through the crowd. His driver tried to hold him back, but he wouldn't listen. When he reached Clara, he knelt beside her. She was barely conscious, her face swollen and dirty. He turned to the people. How much? He asked. Someone said, she stole a sausage. Richard reached into his pocket. He pulled out a thick bundle of cash and threw it in the air. Here, take it. 10 times the price. Now go. The crowd forgot about Clara immediately. They scrambled like ants, grabbing the flying bills, pushing each other for more. Richard ignored them. He gently lifted the girl into his arms. But then, he froze. There, around her neck, was a necklace, a simple chain, a small heart-shaped pendant. But it wasn't just any necklace. It was his necklace, the very same one he had given someone, years ago. His hands trembled. What is this? He whispered. How does she have this? 10 years ago, Richard Williams was just a name, not a brand, not a billionaire, just a boy with calloused hands, worn shoes, and a heart full of quiet suffering. Each morning before the sun rose, he walked to the edge of the village, cutlass in hand. He didn't have land of his own. No, he worked on other people's farms, just enough to earn coins. Coins he never spent on himself. Because back home, there were 2 people waiting. His father, blind. His mother, blind. Both robbed of their sight by illness, both barely alive. But alive because Richard refused to let them go hungry. That morning was no different. He boiled the last handful of rice, split it between them, kissed their foreheads and whispered, I'll bring more when I return. Then he left, sweat already forming on his back before the sun had fully risen. By midday, he had already cleared half the field. His shirt clung to his chest, soaked with sweat, but he didn't stop. Not until he heard it. A voice, high-pitched, panicked, cutting through the thick air like a knife. Richard! Richard! He looked up. There she was, Angela, running, crying, screaming, and something in her voice told him something was wrong. He dropped his cutlass and ran past the yam mounds, past the mango trees, past the old well. His heart was thudding faster than his feet, and yet, when he got home, time stopped. His mother, his father, gone. Gone. Both of them. Their bodies lay still, lifeless, cold, stained with blood. The doors wide open, and bullet shells on the floor. Shot by unknown men. Richard didn't scream. He didn't collapse. He didn't even cry. He just stood there, like a statue carved by grief. But inside, he was bleeding, a kind of bleeding no one could see, and no one could stop. That same day, the villagers gathered. Old men prayed. Women wept. They dug 2 shallow graves in the red soil behind the house. And by sunset, Richard had buried both of his parents, in the same hour, on the same earth. That night, while the others went home, Angela stayed. She didn't speak. She just sat beside him, holding his hand as the moon rose over the graves. Angela had always been there. From their first day in junior class, they were inseparable, always studying, laughing, dreaming. He loved her. She loved him. But now, everything has changed. Richard had nothing left. One evening, just days after the funeral, Richard asked Angela to meet him by the old cassava tree. He looked thin, even thinner than usual. The sadness hadn't left his eyes, but tonight, there was something else. Resolve. "Angela," he said quietly, "I'm leaving." She froze. "Leaving? Where?" "Lagos." Her eyes widened. "But you don't know anyone there." "I know," he said, "but I can't stay here. There's nothing for me here anymore." He swallowed hard. "I'll never forget what they did to my parents. One day I'll find who killed them. But before that, I need to become something. I need to survive. I need to try." Angela's voice trembled. "But what if Lagos swallows you? What if you never come back?" Richard looked away, his voice cracking for the first time. "I have to take that risk." And then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the only valuable thing he had left, a small silver necklace. The pendant was a heart, scratched, old, but still beautiful. He took her hand and placed it gently in her palm. "Keep this," he said, "so no matter what happens to me, you'll know I never forgot you." Angela couldn't speak. Tears slid down her face as Richard turned away and walked into the night. That was the last time she saw him, or so she thought. And now, that same necklace is on the neck of a dying girl, Clara. How did it get there? Where is Angela? And what secret has been buried for 10 long years? Stay with us. The story is just getting started. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet, like and share. Just want to let you know your support means a lot to us and we appreciate you all. Back to the story. When Richard Williams arrived in Lagos, he had nothing. No relatives, no phone, not even a place to sleep. Just a single nylon bag and a heart that refused to give up. Lagos is not for the weak. The horns, the hustle, the hunger. This city will chew you and spit you out without apology. But Richard, he made a promise to himself. No matter what it takes, I will make it in Lagos. And that promise was all he had. He started small, washing plates for a food vendor at Oshodi bus stop. Her name was Auntie Mary, loud, rude, and known across the street for her peppery jollof rice and her even hotter temper. She paid Richard peanuts, treated him like trash. She shouted at him like he was her slave, sometimes in front of customers. "Idiot, come and wash this plate before I break your head." People laughed at him. "See this fine boy washing plates like a housemaid. Go and do Yahoo!" But Richard never replied. He just bowed his head and kept scrubbing, because he remembered what he had left behind. He remembered the graves. He remembered the promise. Every morning before the city woke up by 4 a.m., Richard would bathe by the roadside, using water from a broken tap near the bridge. The cold water stung his skin. Mosquitoes danced in the early morning air, but he never missed a day. By 5 a.m., he was already at Auntie Mary's shop, setting up the tables, lighting the firewood, ready to serve the same people who mocked him. And still, he kept going. Then one morning, something happened, something that would change everything. A black Jeep pulled up beside Auntie Mary's shop. Shiny, expensive, clean. It didn't belong in that part of town. Out stepped a tall, well-dressed man in a black suit and sunglasses. His name was Mr. Anthony. Auntie Mary smiled fake smiles. He was a regular customer, and she knew he always paid well. But even with him standing there, she didn't change. "Richard," she barked, "go and bring the flask, now, before I break your head." Richard, covered in sweat and soapy water, quickly wiped his hands and ran to get the flask. He kept his head low, as usual. But as he approached Mr. Anthony, something happened. The man looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes scanned Richard from head to toe. The rough hands, the worn-out slippers, the tired but still determined look in his eyes. And then he spoke. "Young man, why are you working in a place like this?" Richard froze. He didn't know what to say. Mr. Anthony stepped closer. His voice was calm, but heavy with emotion. "A boy like you, with a strong back and a clear mind. You don't belong here. You should be doing more, becoming more." Richard lowered his head in shame. His eyes began to water, but he refused to let the tears fall. He whispered, barely audible, "Sir, I don't have a choice." Mr. Anthony looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, he dipped his hand into his pocket and brought out a white business card. "Take this. My office number's on it. Call me, or even just flash me." Richard reached out, his hands shaking, and took the card. But there was a problem, a big one. He had no phone. He had never even held one before. As Mr. Anthony entered his car and drove off, Richard just stood there, staring at the card, as tears finally fell down his cheeks. Not because he was sad, but because maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something, a crack of light in a wall that had been closing in on him for years. He looked up at the sky, the sun rising slowly above the Oshodi chaos. He wiped his tears, clenched the business card in his fist, and whispered to himself, "I won't die like this. One day they'll see what I become." But will this card really change Richard's life? Or will fate have more battles for him to fight first? Stay with us. The story's just beginning. The next morning, something was different about Richard. He hadn't slept much the night before. The business card Mr. Anthony gave him lay under his nylon bag he used as a pillow, like a golden ticket in a sea of dirt. For hours he stared at it. I turned it over, read it again, and again. One card, one chance. That's all he had. So the moment Auntie Mary left for the market, shouting as usual and cursing the heat, Richard looked around and quietly approached a man eating at the edge of the table. "Sir, please," he whispered, eyes low. "Can I borrow your phone? Just for one call. Please, it's urgent." The man looked at him, then at the sweat on his face and the desperation in his voice. Without a word, he handed over his old Nokia. Richard's hands shook. He dialed the number. It rang once, twice, and then, "Hello? Who is this?" Richard's throat tightened. "Sir, it's me, Richard, from Auntie Mary's place. You told me to call." Silence. Then Mr. Anthony's voice came alive. Calm, confident, warm. "Ah, Richard, I've been waiting for your call. Thank you for reaching out. Come see me tomorrow morning. I'll text you the address." That was all he said. But those words, they echoed in Richard's soul like a trumpet in a silent church. The next morning, Richard did something he'd never done. He skipped work. No firewood, no jollof, no screaming Auntie Mary, just hope, and a borrowed shirt that didn't even fit. He found the building, tall, glass everywhere, the kind of place he had only seen in newspapers. As he walked in, people looked at him, some with confusion, some with disgust. He didn't care. He climbed the stairs, floor after floor, until he reached the door with the golden letters. Anthony Jackson Tex. He knocked, a voice from inside. "Come in." He entered, and there he was, Mr. Anthony, in a dark gray suit, sitting behind a giant table, surrounded by screens and models and charts. Richard bowed. "Good morning, sir." Mr. Anthony stood up. I walked around the table. "Look at Richard." And then something unbelievable happened. He shook Richard's hand, hold it tight, refused to let go. And with a voice that shook the walls of the room and the very soul of the boy before him, he said, "Congratulations, Richard." Richard blinked. "Sir?" Mr. Anthony smiled. "I was waiting for the right person. Someone humble, someone strong, someone who has tasted pain and never gave up." "I've been battling a sickness for years, Richard. I need to leave the country next week for surgery, and I may never come back. I don't have a wife, no children. Everything I own, every company, every property, will now be handed over to you. You are my chosen successor." Silence. For a full minute, Richard couldn't breathe. He stood frozen, his lips trembling. The boy who once bathed beside the road, the boy who buried his parents with his bare hands, the boy who was mocked for washing plates, was now being handed an empire. He didn't know when the tears started. They fell silently, one after the other, soaking into the borrowed shirt he wore. "Sir, why me?" he whispered. "I'm nobody." Mr. Anthony placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're everything I prayed for." A knock at the door. A tall, elegant woman entered. Mr. Anthony turned to her. "This is Jennifer, my personal assistant. She'll take you shopping, get you a new phone, new SIM, new clothes. From now on, you're not the boy under the bridge. You're Richard Williams of Lagos." And with that, the journey began. The rebirth of a man who never gave up. A story the city would never forget. But what about the past? What about Angela? And how did the necklace end up on Clara's neck? 2 years later, the streets of Lagos no longer whispered Richard Williams' name. They echoed it. His cologne trailed behind him like royalty. His suits, custom tailored from Italy. His car, black, sleek, silent like power itself. He didn't walk into buildings, he commanded them. But on this day, headed to a high-stakes board meeting, something stopped him. A crowd, a commotion. There, lying on the rough pavement of the street, barely breathing, bloodied and bruised, was a little girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old. Her name was Clara, her face swollen, clothes torn, bystanders shouting, blaming, filming. She had stolen a sausage from a vendor's tray, a crime of hunger, not malice. They were going to beat her to death. But then, Richard stepped out of his mere presence. His mere presence silenced the street. Even the air froze. How much is a sausage?" he asked coldly. The seller stammered. It's just 700 naira, sir." Richard nodded, pulled out his wallet, and dropped 7,000 naira on the floor. "Keep the change, and next time, feed a hungry child instead of feeding your ego." With that, he bent down, gently lifted the trembling child into his arms. And then, his eyes caught something. A necklace. Worn, rusted, but familiar. Painfully familiar. His heart skipped. His hands trembled. "No, it can't be," he whispered. That was the exact necklace he had given Angela 10 years ago. The only woman who had ever stayed by his side when the world turned its back. But how? How did this broken little girl end up with it? He didn't have time to think. She needed help. At the hospital, Richard stormed into the emergency room, shouting orders. "Do everything you can. I'll pay every dime. Just save her." The doctors rushed Clara in. Treatment began immediately. Richard didn't leave her side, not for hours. He watched her tiny chest rise and fall slowly, painfully. She reminded him of himself once, bruised, abandoned, fighting for air. Eventually, Clara fell into sleep, her breathing more stable. Richard, exhausted, finally decided to head home, just to freshen up. But even as he drove, his mind stayed behind. With the girl, with the necklace, with the questions. Back home. As he entered, the echo of little footsteps ran to him. It was Sasha, his girlfriend's daughter. A bright, beautiful girl, always full of laughter. She jumped into his arms, her giggle warm and innocent. For a moment, her hug softened the ache in his chest. Then Melissa appeared, his girlfriend. Beautiful, polished, but behind the makeup was a heart full of games, not love. She never loved Richard. She only loved the life his money gave her. And the other man in her life, Michael. Richard, I didn't know that yet. The next morning, Richard woke early, eager to check on Clara. The doctor welcomed him with a smile. "She's recovering faster than we expected. She's strong." Richard smiled for the first time in days. He brought her clothes, good ones, food too. He planned to visit again in the evening, but something tugged at him as he was about to drive to the office. He had forgotten an important file at home. He turned the car around. Home again. He walked in. The house was silent, too silent. He went to Sasha's room. She was fast asleep. Then, he opened his bedroom door, and his world shattered. There, on his bed, Melissa and Michael, entangled, comfortable, laughing. Richard froze. The betrayal pierced deeper than any wound. His chest tightened. Rage flared in his eyes. "Before I return from work," he said with a voice like thunder, "pack your things and leave my house. You swine." He snatched the file and walked out. His hands were steady, but his heart was bleeding. On the road, driving fast, too fast, his mind wasn't on the wheel. And then, crash! A car slammed into him from behind. Screams, glass, tires screeching. Richard survived, just a minor injury. But the other car carried 3 people, 2 women, 1 young man. They were all rushed to the same hospital where Clara was. Richard, ever the man of honor, paid for their treatments, repaired their car, made sure they were okay. But something happened on the day they were discharged. She was there, one of the women, tall, graceful, quiet. Her name, Angela. 10 years had changed them both. She didn't recognize him, and he didn't fully recognize her, but fate remembered. As they were about to leave, something flickered in Richard's mind, a strange feeling in his chest, a whisper from his spirit. He approached her. "Excuse me, can I have your number, just in case you need help?" She smiled, nodded. "Sure, I'm Angela." His soul froze. That name. He hadn't heard it in 10 years. Not from her lips. His voice caught in his throat. He turned away, hiding the storm inside him. "I'll call you later." But he didn't know. He had just spoken to the very woman who once held his heart, the woman he gave that necklace to, the one who vanished, and the only person who knew the truth about Clara. Who is Clara really? Why does she have Angela's necklace? And what happened to Angela 10 years ago that changed everything? This story is about to uncover truths that will leave you breathless. That evening when Richard got home, the house was quiet, too quiet. No Sasha's laughter, no Melissa's fake smiles. They were gone. She had left, taken everything, including the child Richard thought was his. But the truth? Sasha was never his child. Melissa had lied. The real father was a man named Daniel, one of her many secrets. But Richard didn't feel pain, not anymore, because right now, his heart wasn't with Melissa. His mind was elsewhere, spinning with thoughts of Clara and that old rusted necklace that tied her to a past he hadn't touched in 10 years. And then, that woman at the hospital, the soft voice, the eyes, the name, Angela, the woman who once held his broken soul together like glue. Could it really be her? Was fate trying to show him something? That very night, Richard sat in silence, thinking, feeling, remembering. And then he made a decision. "I'll take Clara home," he whispered to himself. "She deserves a better life. And maybe she holds a truth I've been missing." The next morning, Clara was discharged. Her little arms still bore the bruises, but her face had color again. When she saw Richard waiting at the hospital gates, she smiled. It was a weak, unsure smile, the kind children give when they've never been loved, but want to believe love is possible. Richard carried her in his arms like she was made of glass. He brought her to his mansion. No more street corners. No more sausages stolen in desperation. She was home now. He hired a warm, gentle housekeeper to watch over her, cook for her, and make her laugh. And then, he enrolled her in one of the best schools in Lagos. She got new clothes, a school bag, a bed with fluffy pillows, dolls, books. The life she once saw only in dreams was now her reality. And every time Richard looked at her, something stirred in his chest. What is it about this girl? He kept asking himself. Is it guilt? Is it fate? Or is it blood? He didn't know, but something in him was being pulled closer, as if destiny had tied their souls together long ago. 2 weeks later, it was a Monday. Richard was in his office, flipping through paperwork. His secretary buzzed in. "Sir, a lady is here for a job. She says she'll take anything, even as a cleaner or messenger." He sighed. "Let her in." The door opened slowly, and there she was, the woman from the accident, the one from the hospital. She looked tired, pale, dignity in her eyes but pain under her skin. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly, handing over her credentials. Richard took them, and as he opened the folder, he froze. His eyes stopped on one word, a name, a surname, Angela Okoye. His hands began to shake. "Angela," he whispered. She looked at him, confused. "Yes, sir." His heart dropped. It was her, Angela, the woman who once sat beside him on the grave of his parents, the woman he left behind in that dusty village 10 years ago. But she didn't recognize him. Why? Because Angela's past had been erased by suffering. Let's go back in time. 8 years ago, a year after Richard left the village, Angela discovered she was pregnant. She tried to reach him, but he had no phone, no address, no family to ask. When her belly began to grow, the whispers started. Her parents were furious. They said it was a taboo. Getting pregnant in her father's house without the man paying traditional rights? Shameful, unforgivable. They threw her out, with just a nylon bag, torn sandals, and a baby inside her womb. She walked the streets like a ghost. No family, no friends, no food. At night, she slept behind market stalls. By day, she begged for crumbs or fed from trash bins. And slowly, the suffering swallowed her mind. She began to lose herself. One day in the middle of a thunderstorm, Angela went into labor behind a trash dump. No nurse, no blanket, no painkillers, just tears, thunder, and agony. There, on that cold ground, Clara was born. Her tiny cry pierced the night. Angela smiled, though she was weak. She reached into her small bag, pulled out the only thing left of Richard, the necklace, and with shaking hands she placed it on Clara's neck. "This is from your father," she whispered. "Even if I never see him again, he will protect you." For 3 years she raised Clara on the streets, until one day, a woman from Lagos came to visit her aging mother in the village. She saw Angela wandering, half mad, with a child in rags. She pitied her. "Come with me," she said. "I'll take you to Lagos. I'll help you." Angela followed her, but kindness was short-lived. Months later, the woman began accusing Angela of being possessed, saying strange things were happening since she came. One evening, she drove her out, back to the streets. Now in a strange city, no help, no hope. Angela and little Clara slept under bridges, in front of closed shops, even behind bus stops. And that is how Clara ended up in Lagos. The streets became her mother. Hunger became her friend, until the day she stole a sausage, and a man named Richard Williams changed her story forever. Back in the office, Richard looked at Angela. His voice is heavy with years of pain, hope, and disbelief. "Do you remember me?" Angela shook her head slowly. "No, sir, I'm sorry. Have we met?" Richard looked away, tears clouding his vision. He smiled bitterly. "Yes, Angela, we've met. Once upon a lifetime." Will Angela regain her memory? Will Richard tell her the truth? Will he discover Clara is his own daughter? The past is knocking, and this time, it won't be ignored. Time passed. Angela now worked quietly in Richard's company, not as a manager, not as a secretary, but as a cleaner. Richard had offered her the job, not out of pity, but to keep her close, because deep down he wasn't sure how to break the truth to her. She still didn't remember him. She didn't even know that the girl sleeping peacefully in his mansion, Clara, was her own daughter. Richard didn't want to rush her. He wanted to help her heal, gently. So he started paying her more than her salary, secretly deposited extra money into her account, and bought her small, thoughtful gifts. Not flashy ones, just enough to warm her soul. And then one day, he made a decision. "Angela," he said softly, "can you help me get some foodstuff? Tomatoes, pepper, maybe fish. I want to try cooking today." Angela smiled. "Of course, sir." She walked to the market down the road, the sounds of Lagos buzzing around her, and bought everything he asked for. The tomatoes were fresh, but something strange stirred in her chest as she walked back. A soft pull, a whisper from her soul. She didn't know why, but something was about to happen. Hours later, Angela arrived at Richard's home. She pressed the bell. Ding dong. Richard opened the door, dressed in a simple shirt, barefoot, like a man finally at peace. "Come in," he said, smiling. Angela stepped in, slowly, nervous. She had never been in his house before. It was beautiful, clean, warm. Just then, Clara ran out from her room, excited to see who had come. Her tiny feet pattered against the marble floor. Angela turned toward the sound, and their eyes met. Time stood still. Clara tilted her head, smiled, and waved. But Angela's eyes weren't on her smile. They were on her neck. Her heart skipped. She stepped closer, and there it was. The mark, a tiny R, carved gently into the skin. A mark Angela had given her daughter, the day she was born. "Or for Richard," she had whispered then, "so that even if we're separated, he'll find you." Angela's legs weakened. Her hands began to tremble. Her head pounded. Memories came crashing like thunder. The pregnancy, the necklace, the birth on the trash site, the cold nights, the tiny cry, the hug in the dark, the laughter, the pain, the daughter. She looked up at Clara. Tears flowed. "Clara?" Clara stepped forward, slowly, then ran into her arms. They hugged tightly, mother and daughter, as if letting go would break them all over again. Blood had spoken, and it never lies. Richard stood behind them, speechless, tears in his eyes. Finally, the circle was complete, and that weekend, he did the only thing a real man should. With a convoy behind him, Richard stormed the village like royalty. Drums echoed, people gathered, whispers filled the air. In front of everyone, elders, family, strangers, he married Angela properly, paying every right, every honor, every respect she was once denied. She was no longer a forgotten woman on the street. She was now Mrs. Angela Williams, mother to his daughter, queen of his heart, the one who had loved him when he had nothing. And so, Richard, Angela, and Clara lived happily, not just in a mansion, but in a home built from pain, rebuilt in love, and sealed by destiny. If this story touched your heart, please encourage us. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories. Like and share with someone who needs to believe in hope again. Your support means everything to us. Thank you for reading.